very scary.
Yeah. Okay. My live stream. Oh, there we go. Live. Thank you, goodness already. Okay, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara on Tuesday, 23rd of July, 2024, with me, Peter Giblett, and him, Mike Cushman. Hey, Mike, how are you? How are you doing?
Morning, Niagara Falls. Morning, Peter. I'm good. Day's starting off nice, and supposed to be a nice day today and a little rainy tomorrow. So might as well make the best of the day.
Well, we've actually had more rain than what it feels like. I say feels like it's been a wet summer. I might be wrong.
Well, we've had cloud every day. Even if it wasn't wet, we get cloud all the time, right? So
yeah,
we haven't had too many pure sunny days right through, right? Almost every day has cloud. Listen to the weathermen. They always say it's going to rain later on in the afternoon. Possibility of rain, 30% chance of rain.
So that means 70% chance of no rain.
Yes.
So they're batting 300 on that particular bet, aren't they?
Yes, 100%.
So maybe hey, that's a good enough batting average to get you into the Baseball Hall of Fame, but does that get you into the Weatherman Hall of Fame?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, eh? 3 out of 10 times, and you're a superstar.
Yeah, but you see, but then again, it's to get a 300 lifetime batting average, that basically means you've got to win. You've got to score a hit 3 out of 10 times, throughout your career. Is impressive anyway, right? And it's like soccer players don't score. No forward scores in every game they ever go in. They score in perhaps one every 2.5 games they're in, right? Yeah. And it's like, essentially you wish that that superstar of your team scores on that particular day, but on this particular day the defenders have got him well marked.
Yeah.
Or her.
Yes.
So of course it doesn't happen. That's the way it is anyway. So what's the state of the oil slick, Dave? Mike?
We've been monitoring it at different times of the day to try and see if we can find if there's a process that's involved, a certain time of day that they're doing it, something like that. We haven't had a lot of oil lately to really be able to follow it any farther than we followed it. I did find a stream above that feeds this stream, and we have to see when the oil is flowing a lot to go up above and see if it's in that stream. And if not, then that'll help isolate the problem more, right? Because if it's coming out of that stream, there'll be about 4 factories. If it's not coming out of that stream, then they know it's coming from the pipe and they'll be able to trace it that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we're standing. It's still live. They still haven't found out where it's coming from directly, and the test results have not been in from the MECP on what type of, if it was oil, gas, or a coolant.
The problem is there's a lot of oils that will make those kind of same, sheen on the water.
I can pretty well tell you that it's not a gas or diesel from the smell. You would have been able to tell right away if it was a diesel or a gas, right?
Yeah.
But it did have an oil smell to it, and that could be a coolant. That could even be cleansers cleaning out tanks.
That could be any number of industrial oils, couldn't it, potentially?
Yeah, and it could even be like some cleansers even have a rainbow sheen, right? But this did have an oil smell, definitely an oil smell. And when they vacuumed it up, they called it a blob. So it wasn't anything normal. But yeah, that's where we stand right now. Impatiently waiting, hoping that they could find where it came from.
So is the MECP on the case, or are they relying upon you guys?
Well, we're Obviously, us doing the monitoring every day is what they should be doing. But we think that in conjunction with the city, they have to try and trace it through the sewers too, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the sewer map, there's probably 8 to 10 factories connected to this pipe. And then if you go above where the stream is, there's another 4 that could be added.
Well, okay. So, but if you went above where those factories are, is there any way you can trace the stream back to before the factories?
Well, you could figure out which factories could be polluting into that stream directly. There's about 4 of them.
Yeah.
But according to the ministry, they can't go door to door. They don't have the power to go door to door to knock on a factory and say, we got a problem here. We got to see if you're the problem. I don't understand why, when they're the only officers in charge of the environment.
I would think that they would. And even, hey, if I was the manager in a factory and I was leaking, I'd like to know that I was leaking.
Yeah, because if it's an accident,
you want to do something about it.
If it's an accident in one of the processes, right? They might have a process that they think is going into a wastewater treatment plant when it's going into the wrong sewer, right?
Yeah.
It could be something like that. And the only way they're going to find it is if somebody alerts them about it, right?
Well, mind you, I would have to say that, hey, if I'd have been a local, factory manager down there, and I'd have been hearing what you've been saying over the last, couple of weeks. No, I'm not talking about Huron and talking Niagara. I'm talking about what you've said in the press, what's been going on in the press, etc. I'd have been looking at my waste outflow if I was a factory down there.
Yes.
I'd have been sending workers out there to say, hey, is it us?
Yes, especially when the ministry's looking around, and it could cost you a lot of money in the long run, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's
if
exactly.
they nipped it in the bud, they would get away with it clean because they wouldn't trace it back, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, the is it us comes from the viewpoint of you're potentially saving the company thousands of dollars by making sure that the outflow is going to the correct location.
Yeah, and I think as an environmentalist, none of us care who's doing it. We just want it to stop.
Yeah.
And unless it's being maliciously done or done on purpose, then you deserve a fine, right?
It's unusual. It's unusual for anybody to be malicious.
Right.
Some people are kind of blind,
Correct,
blind, but very few people are malicious about that sort of thing.
Right. It could be a process of where they're dumping a bin into something, and there's happens to be a sewer there.
Yeah.
It could be something overlooked like that, and that's what you always hope, that it's just an accident like that, right?
Or basically, or somebody dropped something and there was a massive great spill which hasn't been fully cleaned up.
Yeah, that I don't know about that one, because that took that was probably ongoing for a week and a half before it dissipated and slowed down, right? So
well, yeah, but if you're talking about a massive spill that's in an area, I don't know, maybe, I don't know.
we have there's some what you would call slimy companies that are connected to this pipe that have a history of having bad accidents, right? I don't like to put anybody on the spot because you don't know who's doing it, so I'm not going to name the name.
Yeah, I get it, because actually we don't want to name names when in fact actually as you perfectly said,
no clue who it is.
We don't know. We got no proof. Yeah.
So I won't name names, but there are some slimy companies that are on that list that are attached to this pipe, and all of Niagara Falls would know who they are if I name the names. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And we're not going there.
No. And I don't go there with the ministry either, right? I just report the spill and let the ministry do their job and hope that they find it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, how long do you think?
We got about 5 or 6 people monitoring it, and we're writing down the times that we look to just see if there's a certain time. So it might be a process of some sort, or a certain time that this happens, right?
Yep.
then that would help the MECP narrow it down even more, because they'd be able to come out at that time and monitor it.
Yeah, and it's still as much in the Welland River, or is it not as much?
When you go through the pipe where they have it blocked off, you could see a little sheen there, but it's not anything that you would phone the ministry about usually. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, we don't have enough coming out right now to be able to trace it. If you know, it wouldn't be something you would report right now the way it is.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe it was a spill, you know, an accident, a spill or something, that where things went down a pipe they shouldn't have gone down, and you know, other than what's left on the ground or something, you know, where
Yeah,
people.
all we could do is hope that it doesn't happen anymore.
Well, I'm just wondering what you were saying. 30% chance of rain this afternoon. Well, if the interesting thing I would say is with the rain, if it rains this afternoon, that's the time to go look to see if there's any more, you know,
yeah,
any more oil coming.
Yeah, there's a huge flow when it rains, right?
If it is a spill, you'd expect that because there'd be some left in the crevices, right?
Yeah. When it rains, there's a lot more water flow because the catch basins, that's how they're supposed to work, right? The question is, how long has this pipe gone unmonitored? And now that you want to put high density housing near here, you might want to start monitoring it on a regular basis.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, because you can't have that getting into the household.
Well, you got people that swim there, water ski there, paddleboard, stuff like that, right? And they'll get that oil on them all the time. You got animals that live in that, a lot of animals in that area, right? So it's very hazardous to them, right? So I think it's a serious issue that they have to look at, because they keep suggesting to put housing here where housing never was before. And I also think the one thing they're overlooking of putting housing in this area is they had a discussion about how many people drown in the Welland River every summer. If they put this high density housing near the Welland River and Lions Creek, I think they should do a risk assessment of how many children they expect to die a year, because it's going to happen.
Oh yeah. No, it's that's actually something that bothers me. It's like up till now, it's never been. Well, we all know there's always a couple of year drown in the creek.
Just finished having one, right?
Yeah. And the point being is that that's with kind of the population the way it is. And it's not a good statistic. Hey, I wouldn't be bringing my family up in that area in the, you know, in those new proposed houses that they've got. You know, if I was young, you know, 20 something, I wouldn't be bringing my kids up in that area.
When I'm looking at water with current, that would scare me so much. Even the people that live in Chippewa, not too many of them are along the waterfront. You know what I mean? You don't have high density neighborhoods along the waterfront, right?
No.
So what they're proposing now is a big change, and it will create a lot more drowning.
The higher density neighborhoods are at least a couple of miles away from there, aren't they?
Yes, and to live right on there, like they're suggesting with Oaklands and stuff like that, you're going to see a lot more drownings.
Yeah, well, especially it's that dual directional nature of that river, isn't it?
Well, see, the Welland River is unique because you have two currents, right? The original current goes towards the river, and then you have the hydro canal. So the top part of the water goes to the hydro canal. The original current goes to the Niagara River. That's why you get the drownings in the Welland River so much, is because if you jump in the water and you go
down there,
you go down about 9-10 feet, that's where the churn happens, right?
Yeah.
On high rain days, you could see the current change direction and go towards the river like it originally did. And it never was a strong current until they dredged it and made it the first Welland Canal, right? The first canal from Port Robinson down to there, right? Once they dredged it, that's when the current got stronger, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and exactly, and that whole system is really, it's what makes that river unique, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah. Yes.
And very dangerous. And as I say, if I was 20 something, I'd be thinking twice about moving into such an area. Chippewa, fine, because it's, you've got to walk to get to it.
Yes.
It's a way away.
Yeah. Yeah. But the new neighborhoods they're proposing are going to be right along the waterfront.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the wastewater treatment plant that's going to go there. And it's not going to be a pleasant smell. It's going to be a big wastewater treatment plant, and I don't know of one that smells,
Well, no wastewater treatment plants ever smell nice. You're not coming out smelling like roses. You're actually hoping. What you don't want to be is on the prevailing wind side of that wastewater treatment plant, do you?
You're going to get a lot of angry people once that's built.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so that's another thing you can't overlook, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, and the thing is that you'd think, well, what we need to do is get that built first, so then we can take that into consideration when we're building.
Yeah. Put the cart before the horse again, right?
Yeah. Because if you build it, hey, the guy who's looking at the plot of land to think about building something on it, who then goes, "Whoa, what's that smell?" Might think twice about it.
A long time ago, it's 1972, actually up to 1992. When you got by marine land, you would smell rotten eggs from the Norton, and it smelled like rotten eggs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So Chippewa knows what it's like to deal with a stink like that, and they didn't like it then, and I'm sure they're not going to like it now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and again, putting some of these things in Chippewa's in a situation really where we don't have the infrastructure for it.
I think the whole city's in that situation. We were built for like 75,000 people, not over 100,000, right?
Right. So good morning. Chris Simone says he was on the Welland River Sunday and it was clean coming out of the Stanley Industrial. So no breach at the huge construction site. I will send Mike videos from Sunday.
Thank you very much, Christopher. The more people that check, the better.
I paddled the length of the Welland Canal, Chippewa, Welland River, Chippewa to Port Robinson. It looked gorgeous. Okay.
Awesome.
Right. Where is the new water treatment plant? It's further up towards the rail bridge, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I was glad to move here in 2013 when the stink left Norton.
Yes, sir. No, it was very bad, Peter. You would get up just past Marine Land.
Yeah.
And it was.
I know. I remember the smell. That's part of why I was laughing at what Chris was saying there. I remember the smell from those early days, and you think to yourself, what the heck is this stuff?
Yeah, it was sulfur.
Yeah.
It was not good. It was off the charts. The air emissions tests were off the charts, right?
Yeah.
I know when I was doing my studies that there were a lot of brain aneurysms and brain cancers in Chippewa at that time. And the brain aneurysms were the scary part. Even a doctor told me that he's never seen so many brain aneurysms in his life. So it was pretty prevalent at the time. I know 3 people still today that had brain aneurysms and survived from it, but of course they're on disability from it, right?
Yeah. Well, so where's Erin Brockovich when you need her, eh?
Actually, I had a big conversation with her one time, and she did a blog on me.
No, I know she's done a lot. I know she's done a lot of work. I'm joking about that.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So, did you ever meet her?
We spoke via email a few times, and then she wrote a big blog on the work I was doing.
Okay.
Which I thought was an honor, right? But
Oh, yeah. Angela Brown met her one time at some legal symposium.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
very
And she
interesting
said she
person.
was a fascinating lady. And she's
Yeah,
not a
very.
lawyer, she's only a law clerk, but
Yes,
she's done a heck of a lot of work in environmental law.
yes, yeah. She's like me. She's a bull.
All right. And let's speak about bulls, or at least that's the way it seems to me. Harris basically is saying that she knows Trump's type. She's ready to fight. Basically, she pledged to take the fight to Donald Trump as the Democrat nominee, invoking her former career as a prosecutor who took on predators, cheaters, and fraudsters. She's taken on predators of all kinds while serving as prosecutor and an attorney general of California. And those predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say I know Donald Trump's type. She's coming out fist blazing there, isn't she?
Isn't that what everybody's been waiting for a long time? Was to someone to call the spade a spade, and if you really want to have an argument, let's have a talk about the realities of what you've done. How come Joe Biden's never been able to do that? Because he's got a tainted background that they keep pointing out, and then he shuts up, right? You ain't gonna have a tainted background with this lady.
I think she's going to be your law. You know, typically when it comes to Republican versus Democrat, your Democrats lose out on the law and order. You know, the law and order issues, right? Here, she's going to be the master of law and order.
Yeah, it could be a very, very interesting discussions now. This is the quietest I've ever heard Trump in a long time.
Well, you know, at the moment, until she's officially nominated, Trump doesn't really have to do much because he's in the lead. But talking about the lead, one of the things I do is look at the polls, and Biden was trailing by 2% in Wisconsin, about 4% in Pennsylvania, and about 2% in Michigan. And the question is, where is Harris going to be in each of those three polls?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting race, I think. Now you have a person that could talk, that's not going to trip over their tongue. And then, Biden also had a stutter, right? So if you start to stutter and then trying to think of a different word to use while somebody's whispering in your ear, you're going to stutter more, right? And this is what Trump used to his advantage, big time, right?
4 years ago, Biden didn't really have that much of a stutter. Well, once or twice he would be quiet worded, but generally speaking, he was fairly confident about his words 4 years ago. But that's entirely different situation.
Actually, if you ever watch him speak publicly, he has trained his mind to move to a different word when he's having a problem with one word. And he's had that problem his whole life. And if you go back and watch other times he was on TV speaking, he always changes the words he's going to use because he's going to get stuck and stutter. He's trained his mind to do this, and you could see it. You could see him when see it functioning while he's talking, right? And that's the way he's trained his mind to do it. And I think as he's getting older, that stutter thing is a lot harder for him to use his mind to get ahead of it, right?
Yeah. But we've got Well, we're now in July, so we've got August, September, October, then the election. So we're just about 3.5 months away from an election.
It's an emergency.
Yeah. So, so it looks like, as it stands at the moment, from all of these counts, Harris has 2,000 votes. Yeah, 2,500 delegates. And she needed 1976 to clinch the nomination. So as of Monday night, she already has the tally she needs. She has also won support from Nancy Pelosi, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and a few others. And to be quite honest, Pelosi, Shapiro, or Whitmer would all make excellent running mates. Based upon their position as well-known leaders within that party.
Yeah, and I guess they've collected $100 million since Sunday too.
Yeah.
From donations. So,
and the interesting thing is about that, I saw a little clip of a news article yesterday. A lot of that has been from just normal Democrats who are sending, $5, $10, $20, that type of thing.
Well, that'll scare the crap out of the Republicans, won't it?
Yeah. And hey, you can make, honestly, donations of the kind which are the $5, $10 donations. People, the point about that is that's come from hard-earned people's wages, right? From the middle class, from the poorest people in that community. So that money is coming from rock bottom, and that money can come again. New paycheck. It's a new month. I'm getting paid again. Here's my $5, $10, etc., etc. That can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and if you think about it, a $5 donation here and there that adds up to 100 million. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
exactly.
A lot of people.
And that actually is firm commitments to vote as well. Whereas if you're giving $30 million to her campaign, it's a $30 million one-off donation, right? You're not going to give another $30 million next month, all right? It's a $30 million one-off donation.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be a very interesting race now. It's going to, like I said to you earlier, it's going to be like a mother scolding a spoiled brat. I think she's going to rip them apart. I really do.
He's definitely the law and order candidate, right?
Trump's going to get foot and mouth syndrome and say something about race or something about women. He can't help himself, and then she's going to hop all over that.
Yeah, and any way, now will she win? That's another question. I'm at this stage, you see, if we're going to be honest, and I'm not saying a word against Harris, but if we're going to be honest, there are a lot of people out in America. If you diagnose where the USA is, we've not even had Hillary Clinton didn't win, right? In 2016, Hillary Clinton did not win. She didn't win the nomination in 2020. So it's always been tough for women in America to get the vote, right? Especially tough when that woman isn't white, right? So that potentially has, that's her potential downfall. But
what's on the ballot this time is women's rights for reproductive problems, right? That's on the ballot this time.
That is true, absolutely true.
So if there's ever a time to have a woman run for president, it would be right now, where you could get all the women to vote for you.
Exactly, because in fact, actually, the position in Dobbs and Jackson versus and the question over those lost rights of Roe and Wade. That's you're right. It's an absolute important moment for women's rights right now.
So if you look at that, and if she could get the women vote, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. And then you add to that her legal knowledge of everything. I think she's got a good fight. I think she's got something to fight for, and she's got a good background to do it, right?
Yeah. Well, she'd be, for example, even if, let's say, Nancy Pelosi or Josh Shapiro was actually the presidential nominee, you know what? She'd almost be the perfect attorney general if they won the race, right?
Yeah, and I can't see her having another woman for vice president, because that would be I think they're going to get an old white guy. You know what I mean? I really do. I think they'll have an old white guy for vice president just to keep the masses happy.
Well, I think the majority, from what I've been seeing, it's most likely, and I'm tipping probably in the direction, just because of what I've been looking at, what I've been hearing, that it's most likely going to be Shapiro,
right?
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
Yeah,
right?
So I don't know. I think she's brightened up the fight, and it could be interesting now.
She's changed the fight, that's for sure. Yes. Absolutely, put it in a brand new direction. And the fact that within 24 hours she's gotten big backers within the Democrat Party. You don't get people like Pelosi in your direction without, if you're a useless candidate, you wouldn't get Pelosi.
Right.
And
no, I think it's going to be interesting. Interesting contrast of people, right?
Yeah. And I'm talking about this as an independent commentator. I'm not favoring the Democrats. I'm trying to look at it totally independently, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you do look at it that way, they're opposite people.
Yeah, and there's a lot, in the Democrats. There's been a lot of criticism over the Democrats over the last 10 years, but I think that people like Pelosi have been particularly Pelosi. She's been she's been a huge leader of the Democrats, and being House of Representatives Speaker is actually, it's a powerful position.
She was an outstanding speaker, and she kept the Democrats in line all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think there were too many speakers that kept their party in line like she did.
Yeah, exactly. And she's ruled that house with an iron fist to some extent, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which would have made her in her own right actually a very powerful candidate.
Yeah, but again, age comes into a factor there. She's up there in age, right? And again, now Harris's age is another thing, right? She could really drive home that Donald Trump's an old man, right?
Well, Harris is 59, which basically used to be seen as quite young for a presidential candidate.
Yes, but that's what they're looking for today, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely I think what they need. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yes, it looks like a move in the right direction. It just happened so late because Joe didn't want to retire, right?
Yeah. And that was the thing. Like, has Joe not wishing to retire held back the Democrats in their potential to fight for that victory? Yes. Some would argue certainly it has, right?
Yes, 100%. I agree. I'm just anxious to see her start to speak, because that nasal voice could drive people crazy, right?
we shall see. Well, we shall see anyway. But it's like I don't know. It's an interesting election. I'm still way off from calling it.
Yeah. you'll know in a couple weeks how it's going to unravel. I don't think they're going to get a lot of dirt on her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens because that's all it's going to rely on. I mean, Trump doesn't rely on truth and facts. He relies on dirt to be able to throw, right? And if they can't get dirt, then he's going to have nothing.
Well, it's the American way. It has to be said in politics. It's the American way. I've seen this kind of thing. You watch some of the Buffalo TV channels, and you've got George whatever. He's spent the last 10 years in this position of whatever at Buffalo City Council, and he's wasted millions of dollars, millions of your dollars. I Joe New Guy pledged that money is never going to be wasted at all, and everything is going to be accountable. You wind the clock on 10 years, and Bob Newhart is the one who's saying about Joe New Guy as to how he's wasting, not $20 million, but $200 million.
Yeah. Yeah. It's never-ending cycle, but it's throwing mud instead of stating facts of what you're running on or whatnot, right? Yeah. Slinging mud is a horrible political.
It's the American way.
It's horrible.
It's the American way, and unfortunately, slinging mud is gotten into our elections as well.
It's going in that direction. People. I mean, you're like me. You put yourself out there on conversation, and now you're starting to get people. When you disagree with them, they start to sling mud instead of have a conversation. And it's like, oh, this conversation's over until you want to really have a conversation, because slinging mud isn't the answer, right?
No.
And to call me a name because we disagree on a topic instead of just having a conversation on it.
That's why, you know what, frankly, Mike, I'd prefer to have a conversation with you, even if I totally disagreed with you, than I would with somebody that I agree, than some of the people that I agree with that just like to sling mud. I'm not a mudslinger, never have been.
No, I like to have the conversation and learn, right?
Yeah.
Only way you're going to learn is to find that happy medium where everybody is and listen to their point of view.
At the end of the day, you and I know the way this works is you and I could hold a conversation. We could both butt heads about it, and we'd walk away shaking hands.
Sure. And that's the way to be, right? That doesn't mean I hate you. That doesn't mean I dislike you. It just means that we have a different view on something that we need to learn from, right? I'm always interested in what makes you think that way. And then I learn something from that, right? Sometimes I might say, hey, you're right and I'm wrong. Holy cow, I never looked at it that way.
Sometimes what happens is you butt heads and you say, no, I'm right, you're wrong. And then 3 months later, you come back and say, no, I'm sorry, Mike. You were right on that at the end of the day.
Yeah, I usually end those conversations with, I agree to disagree.
Yeah, exactly. That's about where I go.
Then it's a peaceful transaction, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Okay. So we got 2 new doctors coming into the Falls, and the only reason that has been really news is because we're down on doctors for quite some time. We've been needing to recruit doctors, and to hear that we've got some new doctors coming to the Falls is very good news.
Yes, it's a welcome thing. I myself would love to switch doctors, but I'm kind of stuck in limbo because there's no doctors to go to or nobody accepting patients. Doctors have like 5,000 patients each, and that's not an exaggeration. It is crazy what's going on here.
Yeah.
So the more doctors we get here, the better. I still don't understand why they haven't come up with some kind of educational program where, education's free as long as you serve 5 to 10 years here first, something along those lines. We need incentive programs because the states pay so much for the
yeah, the
private
way that
sector,
those
right?
incentive programs would have to work is that we would actually have to look at candidates and say that, you know, at a certain point, once you got, if you come from Niagara, at a certain point, once you've got through to your doctoral, you know, you've got through to your doctoral studies and you're becoming a doctor, at that point, we can assess falls, people from the falls, and grant them stuff provided they agree to come back here.
Yeah, and I think again it's needed. I mean, we look at what they're doing, right? They get their education here, and then you see the private sector over the states paying so much. How do you say no, right?
Yeah,
So we need something to attract the doctors here. Uh,
yeah.
Not being in debt after being educated would be a huge thing, maybe, right? How much debt do you accumulate doing your medical practice, you know, before you become a doctor and you're going to school? How much money does it cost, right?
Yeah.
I think
Oh
that
yeah.
would be a very good incentive to say, you know, you if you serve here, your education's free.
Yeah, but you have to have, yeah, your education's paid for, but you have to have gotten, you have to have at least gotten most of the way through your studies,
Well, you
because
don't
what
want
you
to quack. Yeah.
yeah, you don't want to pay, you don't want to pay for those that bail out halfway or don't even
Yeah,
get through
you
the
don't
first
you don't
year.
want poor doctors or bad doctors, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
there has to be with the incentive program, of course, there has to be limits and expectations, right? So
yeah, yeah. And okay, so year to date for 2024, we recruited 2 doctors at the total cost of $100,000, according to Chief Administrator Jason Burgess. And 6 physicians were recruited also in 2023.
well, I can't I hope they get more doctors. I mean, I know right now, like I said, as a person, I would like to switch doctors. To try and
Oh,
find a family doctor is a very difficult thing.
well, what you've got to do is look out to the places where these new doctors are landing.
Yeah.
Figure out where they're landing and be on the queue first day one, right?
Yeah, because what happened with me was my doctor passed away, and then we
Yeah,
all got switched to a different doctor, and we never knew what this doctor was like because I never used to go to the doctor for anything. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
yeah,
And then when I got injured, I found out what a quack she was, and by then it was too late.
yeah. Well, it was the same sort of thing because what happened with my doctor, he died, and there was a new doctor, you know, who just come into Niagara Falls, and we went, okay, let's try her. She seemed to have good reviews, and we basically just went straight to her. I didn't want to, you know, have the situation whereby I just moved by default into the original surgery,
Right,
you know,
right.
new doctor who came along, you know, no, I don't know who that new doctor is. And they may have been perfectly good, but I just went out to look out for who are good new doctors in this neighborhood, you know, in this
Yeah,
area.
it's a really hard thing in this area to find a doctor, and then let alone find a doctor you like, but find a doctor at all.
Yeah.
It's crazy how many patients they have. Even if you just look at the emergency ward and the way our hospital system works, one doctor in the whole emergency ward, it's overwhelming, right? Uh, you get that many patients. You're not even having time to breathe every day, right? I can't see how you're expected to do a good job like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You need, you know, I think every emergency ward needs at least 2 doctors on call all the time.
Minimum, yes,
Minimum,
yes.
absolute minimum.
And not just interns. That's another thing,
Yeah.
right? Those poor people cannot. You can't do a really good job. You would be just doing patchwork and getting on to
Well,
the next person, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, an intern. What should happen with an intern is, or those that they're not called interns, but there was a different name for them, right? But those people who are going through training, they basically, what should happen is they are in addition to any of the doctors that you actually have. Yes, they may be the first person who comes into the room to diagnose you. So what's wrong, Mr. Cushman? Oh, I can see your big toe is triple the size it should be. That hurts, right? Etc. Etc. Right? So
Yeah.
they might look at it, diagnose it. Now they need to go to the senior doctor, the doctor who's the actual full doctor. They shouldn't be the one who kind of take a bit, take 3 spoonfuls of syrup and you'll be okay in a week.
Well, we have a triage system in our hospital now, right? And that's basically what you're describing. He could do stitches. He could do, certain things that are not really hard to diagnose. But when he comes across something that's difficult, there should be a senior doctor on staff that he could go to. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's not there right now. There's one doctor on staff, and half the time he's an intern, and he's getting introduced to stuff that's over his head sometimes. And then what? All the rest of the patients have to wait, right? Not the doctor's fault. He's the only doctor there, but it's an insane system that is not adequate, and we're stuck in the middle of it. And most of us aren't even aware of it until we have a crisis and have to go to the emergency ward. And then we look and go, what is this? What's going on here? Well, it's going on every day. Open your eyes and start getting off the couch, because you shouldn't wait until it affects you. It's happening right now, and it's affecting all of us, right? And our governments should do something about it, because if they were to have an emergency and walk into a normal emergency ward, what would they think about that?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say one thing to think about is waiting 8 hours to be seen in a hospital waiting room. Is that a breach of your human rights?
Whew, that's a good question, and it probably is.
I was sat there for 7 hours, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so is that a breach of my human rights? And I'm looking up and I'm finding articles by lawyers and articles by doctors who are all agreed that it is.
That's an interesting topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And should be addressed in my mind, because we go to the world and preach human rights, human rights, human rights. And meanwhile, in our own country, in our own backyard, these things are happening, right? And they're happening all the time. This isn't just a once in a lifetime thing or a once in a while.
Yeah.
It's the way our system is, and it's not acceptable. But what do we do about it?
Yeah. And the point being is that, okay, so there are times when you're going to wait in hospital for a long time. My situation was, okay, so triage is there for prioritizing things. So heart attacks, first priority. Heart conditions of any kind, also first priority. Anything that's going to, loss of limb is fairly high up there. Eye injuries should be first priority. Yet I was there for an eye injury 8 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
I should have been high on the priority list.
Yeah, and that 8 hours could have damaged you more.
Yeah.
That, like, if blinking your eye was scratching it, then that 8 hours would damage it more.
Could have been, yeah.
Same with if you have a cut, your body starts to heal, right? In that 8 hours, your body's really starting to heal. It's harder to stitch 8 hours later than it is, when it's fresh, right?
Yeah.
And
that's why they have to clean it all out again.
Yeah, your body starts to heal, right? And when that happens, it's harder to treat. So I really think that's something to look into, Peter. If it is a breach of human rights, then somehow the topic should be brought up, because we need a fix and we need it bad.
Yeah.
Right?
And the point being is that it's the, who are you taking to the human rights has got to end up being like Niagara Regional Health. Right?
Yeah, well, we have incidents with Niagara Regional Health that are supposed to be involved that are never involved, right? We had people from a swimming pool get sent down that couldn't breathe, and nobody informed Regional Health about it. They just treated the people and sent them back to the hotel that got them sick. And the next day, nobody told Regional Health about the problem. Same with Mancuso Chemical. There was a guy that fell into some chemicals and he went to the emergency ward. All the people that treated him got very sick from the chemicals because there was no protocol for this. And because of that accident, they had to change all the protocol of how to treat chemical disasters, because all the people that were in treating the person at the time in the emergency ward, they all got sick from the chemicals. So yeah, there's big problems with this, always has been, and we know about it, but we aren't fixing any of it.
Okay. Karen says, I've never understood why your own family doctor isn't allowed to see their own patients in the hospital.
Yeah, that's crazy too. And they used to have the family doctors volunteer to do the rounds too once in a while, and that doesn't seem to be happening, right?
Yeah. As I understand it, all these hospital rules are now set by the local health LHIN.
Yeah, there's a lot of bureaucracy in the hospitals. The LHINs, remember, they were all gutted and then put into one LHIN, and they did a whole bunch of different changes. I think all the changes, none of them were a fix for anything. As a matter of fact, they've seemed to make us go backwards. They privatized the cleaning companies that clean the hospitals. And that's when you had huge breakouts of staph infection and everything else, C. difficile and VRE. Still today, those three things are present in the old hospitals like crazy, right? But we never fixed the problem of privatizing the cleaning people that did the cutbacks that caused a lot of these problems. So we got huge problems in the hospital system, and the lack of doctors is inexplicable, really, because when you think about it, how many people does one family doctor have? And isn't there a limit on that? And then when you hit the limit,
probably is a limit on that.
And then when you hit the limit, how many doctors are at the limit? And that should explain to the government what we need and how we need it. And again, if we go back to the emergency wards and one doctor in the emergency ward, I find that to be so troubling, because if I get hurt or if I get to the point where I feel I have to go to the emergency ward, I don't know about you, but I'm afraid now. I go in and I read the medical journal and go in loaded now, because I don't trust nobody in the emergency ward anymore.
No, I don't. I wouldn't trust the emergency ward. It's like, to me, it's a radical comparison, but I can't go anywhere else. To me, stepping into the emergency ward is like crossing the Gaza border.
It's scary, isn't it? And isn't it sad that you're scared to go to the emergency ward?
Yeah.
Like, that's a frightening thing. Like, and yet we're still accepting it.
I'm going to wait 3 weeks to go see my doctor rather than go to the emergency ward.
Yes. And that's a serious issue. I mean, and nobody's doing anything to fix it. That's the thing that's bothering me the most. Year after year, it's the same, right? Yeah. And then when you get into an emergency, oh my gosh, your anxiety goes through the roof, because now you have to go into a form of protectionism, right?
Well, now you're sitting in an area and you don't know whether that person on the other side of the room who's coughing has got COVID or something even worse.
Yeah, so you're in a waiting room for 8 hours with people that are sick, right?
Yeah.
8 hours with people that have drug problems and they shouldn't be in the waiting room, but they're in the waiting room moaning and groaning and making it an uncomfortable thing. 8 hours.
With the homeless guy who's managed to sneak in there for at least a couple of hours.
Yeah, and especially in the winter because they just go in there to get warm, right?
Yeah, and I'm not complaining about the homeless guy being there. I'm just stating it's a fact that they are there. Right?
But it's not the place they should be.
Absolutely,
and it causes an addition onto the problem, right?
Yeah.
Now you have security that has to do their job. You know, you don't want to kick them out because they deserve to have a warming station somewhere.
Yeah.
But on the same note, the emergency ward isn't the place that's supposed to happen, right? So, I think
probably the security guy will probably tolerate them for about 45 minutes, an hour, and then they'll be starting to drop hints about, you know, how are you warm now?
Yeah.
Right. Are you now do you need to use the bathroom?
Yeah.
You know, okay, now you've used the bathroom. Is it time to move on?
Yes.
They're never you know, at that stage they're usually polite, but that's what they're looking at. Okay. Yeah. You know, we need to do something about that. We've got a desperate situation. I wouldn't want to go to G&GH for anything right now.
No. Oh, well, even St. Catherine's, right? You got this great big grand hospital, up-to-date, state-of-the-art equipment, and one doctor in the whole emergency ward.
Yeah.
You're in the same boat.
Wouldn't want to go there either, right?
So when we have a regional hospital built, is it going to be the same?
Yeah.
But now they're going to be serving people from Fort Erie, Welland, Niagara Falls. We're going to be Thorold. We're going to be serving all these other communities. And is it still going to be one doctor in the whole emergency ward? Then we've accomplished nothing but made a bigger disaster.
Okay, let's move on to our last story of the day. All right. Ford is saying that the Science Center location where it currently is sleepy. What's your thoughts?
I don't know. I don't trust Doug Ford. Nobody does trust Doug Ford. We've seen pictures of where there's developments that are near the Science Center that happen. The ideas of the developments happen to overlap a little bit into where the Science Center is. So everybody is thinking that this is just another way that he's repaying all his developers, and he's going to give them that sweet spot where the Science Center is. And just move it. So I hope that what he's saying is true. I hope that they do have plans to make this a huge and wondrous place, right? But we all know that Doug Ford is only in for another year and a half, and then there's another election, right? What's going to happen when he walks away? I think we're going to see that the Science Center where it sits today is prime real estate, and that's what this is about.
I have a tendency to agree with you because Ontario Place, you know, is the room in Ontario Place for the Science Center? Probably the answer to that is no.
Yeah, they're going to have to build.
Yeah. So why build a new place? Why don't you just simply repair the current place? And as you say, I think that a lot of it has got to do with the fact that there's developers knocking on the door and would like that little plot of land.
Oh, it's prime real estate, right in the heart of everything.
Yeah,
that sleepy little location.
Yeah, sleepy little. You see, when you think about it, you know, the calling the Science Center sleepy is to say that the Science Center is, itself is boring. But if you're talking about the location where it is and it's a sleepy neighborhood, well, what you're talking about there is prime real estate.
Yes.
And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
I think that's all it's going to come down to. and
But
everybody else pretty well thinks that too.
But the thing is, I'd prefer that we have a science center than three condominium towers.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? That science center is beautiful. I mean, it's awe-inspiring once you get inside. Um,
Well,
and
yeah.
and you could spend hours in there and still have to come back the next day because you haven't seen everything, right? So,
Well,
um,
and I was going to say that's ideal for little kids who can go in there and go, "What happens when I push this button?"
we used to have a magnificent museum here in Niagara Falls, and it got taken away, and and it was marvelous. It had so many things in it, and ancient things, and it was like a mini science center with what it had, right? And
Mhm.
I don't know why we ever closed it because it was beautiful, and it ended up one of the pharaohs that was on display there was Tutankhamun's father, so he ended up being huge, right?
Yeah.
So in that science center, they got so many things collected over the decades. Can you imagine what's in the basements of that science center that
Oh,
haven't even been
yeah.
revealed yet?
What you see on display is probably less than a tenth of what they have.
Yes. So imagine what they're going to have to do to move that,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and how big of a space they're going to need to move it all to. So I don't know. I don't agree with it. I think it's a no brainer. The building is what it is. That is the science center. I think they should fix what they got because to move that facility and all those things is is just causing. It's probably going to cause damage to a lot of things that are ancient, right?
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
I don't agree with the idea.
And as you say, I think it's all about that redevelopment for new housing. Um, it's in green space right now where the science center is surrounded by green space, but knocking on the door on both sides is definitely those condo complexes.
Yes, yeah, and I've seen the posts on Facebook from a couple reliable people that it just overlaps enough to say we want that property, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And Karen says it wasn't prime real estate when it was first built. Yeah, that's probably true because back those days it was leafy green land out there, right?
yes, yeah, yeah, and I just, I just, I don't know about you, but I don't trust Doug Ford. I never have. Um, just because he's the premier doesn't mean I voted for him. So I don't I don't trust the ideas he's got, and I feel his last 4 years are going to have changed Ontario forever. Um,
Well, but
I don't think
again,
we're going to get back very many things that we lost, and that's always the problem.
you were talking about leadership and next elections, etc. I don't think as we stand right now, and obviously things may change in a year and a half, in 2 years. But Bonnie Crombie isn't exactly, as she stands right now, isn't exactly in a command position.
You know, the best leader out there is the leader of the Greens, and he doesn't got a chance. He's an intelligent man. When he debates, he's the best debater on the stage, and nobody's
But
gonna vote for the Greens.
you're biased. You're an environmentalist, sir.
Yeah, but I'm not talking from that point of view. When he was on the debate stage, he was the smartest guy on the stage. And I wasn't
I
even
get you.
looking from a green stand, right?
Yeah.
It's just too bad he's in the Green Party because they're not going to get elected, right? So it's a bummer because he's the only one that seems to be a leader that does his homework. You know, the rest of them, I hear the Charlie Brown teacher again. Wah 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 wah. Yeah, there's no
Well, at the
captivating
moment,
leaders. There's no
well, at the
captivating
moment,
leaders.
sorry, go on.
There's no captivating leaders, and I fear that Ford will be in for another 4 years.
Yeah, and that's exactly the way I feel about it. You know, Bonnie Crombie doesn't exactly, you know, she hasn't actually turned any switches for anybody. She kind of isn't moving as if it's like, hey, she's an option to vote for, right?
Yeah, the
And
liberals haven't
that's the
cleaned up their
problem.
party.
Yeah,
Yeah, the liberals
and
haven't cleaned up their party, right? Just because they got somebody that could be a good leader, who else is there? Their
they need
party
to
has not
scrub
been.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, their party hasn't been cleaned up from the last two messes, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
the
And
last
we
two
had
liberal
those.
parties that ran, whew, some of the stuff they did was irreversible and has damaged this province forever, right? And that's where I find us federally and provincially. We have the liberals and the conservative governments that just keep switching places, and our country and our province are in horrible positions, not getting any better. Not nobody's ever changing anything, and all you could do is vote for liberal or conservative because the other parties don't seem to have anybody strong enough to do anything. So we just seem to be in the same mess over and over again, almost like the United States.
Well, and this is part of the problem is that I've done a bit of research into this and looking at why, why do people vote the way that they vote? And there's a lot of issues about people voting the way they vote. And to some extent, we have this situation in many parts where people saying, I'm not going to vote for any of these people, and this is why we got declining polls. I'm not going to vote for any of these people because I voted for these people before they did nothing for me. I voted for that party before they did nothing for me. That type of thing, right?
Yeah, we're getting into the same thing that the United States is, that we're voting people for the lesser of two evils, which is the way you should not be voting.
Yeah. And and exactly. And the thing is that you should be looking at a any individual candidate and be looking at what they bring, how they can help you and the people around you, your family, your friends, your neighborhood, etc., etc. And at the end of the day, a lot of the problems that we have is because a lot of our budgets are actually misappropriated, if you know what I mean. Of course, we have national type spending, which has to happen at a national level, and we have provincial type spending that has to happen at a provincial level, but we have way too little municipal spending, and we all live in neighborhoods, and a lot of people curse what's going on in their neighborhood, and it's often the neighborhoods that are left unattended, and we need to turn it around, and we kind of need to apportion back to the neighborhoods the money that those neighborhoods raise in taxes.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, Peter, but if those neighborhoods would vote, then maybe there'd be a change. We need way more people voting too, right? Our major political problem,
but again,
our major political problem is 23% of the population voting.
Yeah, I know.
That's a huge underlying problem. When you only got 23% of your population voting, if only half of them vote for one party, right? Then that's 14% of your general population gave 100% of the power to that political party.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And when you think about it, that when it comes down to a lot of the polls, whether you're going first past the post or proportional representation, in most communities, you only need 40% of the votes to actually win an absolute majority, and that 40% of the vote is probably going to be less than 20%
of the popular
20% of the population, right?
Yes.
And the challenge that we always had. Well, in Britain, we always laughed at the fact that Reagan won his second term on 21% of the vote. But when we look at it now, hey, that was a fantastic amount to have gotten.
Yeah, when I watch polls and they're saying, "Oh, the liberals are in trouble. They only have 33% of the vote." That's all they're aiming for. They're not aiming for 40 or 50% because they know there's not very many people voting. If they have 35% of the vote, they are happy. And that's a sad case in today's world of politics. So that's the problem where we're at with our political cycle, is that we need more people to vote. Like you said, we in our small neighborhoods are being forgotten because we're not voting.
And it comes down to a lot to do with that. But and again, we obviously we've got national spending that we need to do on things like defense. Nobody can deny that. But at the end of the day, a lot of what we're paying taxes needs to come back to our local communities.
Yeah. And what's happening in defense is an embarrassment for the country, and
yeah. Well,
for Trudeau to sit there and say we're not going to meet our obligations for NATO, but we're going to give $5 million more to the Ukraine war in the same sentence. Doesn't make sense to us, and it doesn't make sense to the world either.
No, absolutely. All right, and I think we can call it quits at that point, Mike. All right, because I think there's a lot of people who agree with you about that, but we've been prattling on a little bit long.
Yeah.